started. I'm Tracy Furman. I'm the mayor of the town of Kensington, and I want to welcome you here to Town Hall. And tonight I have as my assistant one of our council members, Connor Crimmins, is up front. He's going to be our timer. And then one of our other council members, Darren Bartram, is in the back there. And so thank you for coming, gentlemen. I want to thank candidate Ron Franks, who had the great idea for us to have a forum here tonight. So he got the wheels started, and then we were able to just pick it up and set it up for tonight. So it was really his idea. So thank you, Ron. I did want to let people know we have all the candidates here for the delegates. We have 2 of the 3 Senate delegates, Senate candidates. Jeff Waldstreicher is in Annapolis, and he's unable to attend, so he's the only one missing tonight. We're also recording the forum. Montgomery Municipal Channel TV 16 is recording tonight, and you can go on their website and find out when it's going to be scheduled to, so you can see it on the TV. I want to remind everybody to turn off your cell phones, to silence your cell phones. So if everybody would check those real quick, that would be good, your mobile devices. I'm going to quickly introduce tonight's candidates. For Senate, we have Dana Beyer, Michelle Carhart, House of Delegate candidates, Al Carr, Ron Franks, Mila Johns, Helga Luest, Leslie Milano, Joel Rubin, Emily Shetty, and Jared Solomon. We've also invited, I've seen one but not the other, we invited the Green Party candidate John Cook and the Republican candidate Linda Willard here tonight. I know Linda's in the back, so she's not participating, neither are participating in the Democratic primary, but we invited them to come, so if you want to talk to them, they would make themselves available. I'm going to introduce our moderator so we can get started. David Weaver is a good friend of mine. We attend St. Paul's United Methodist Church across the street. He's a lifelong District 18 resident, and he has served in the Obama administration and has held senior staff positions with Chris Van Hollen, Peter Francho, and Doug Duncan. Let's get started.
Thank you, Mayor Furman, and thank you to the town for hosting this forum tonight. Good evening, candidates. Okay, so the ground rules are, just so everybody knows, a reminder, no opening statements. We're going to jump into questions from the audience. I brought a few questions in case we didn't have enough people here tonight with questions, but you all have sent me several, and please continue to do so. If you could bring them up this area, Tracy will be collecting them. And we're going to get started with this question right here, which was just handed to me. How do you believe Maryland should move forward on clean energy policy? Jared, will start down here and work towards me.
Sure. Guess we'll stay seated. Thank you for the question, and thank you for hosting us tonight. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. So there's a couple of things. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club, and environmental policy and infrastructure are one of the big reasons why I decided to run. First and foremost, I am fully supportive of the 100% renewable energy goal. I love the fact that that bill in particular really tries to grow the industry in Maryland. We should be leading in Western Maryland on producing solar. We should be leading on the Eastern Shore and the Atlantic Ocean on wind. Somebody was just telling me, the climate scientist whose door I happened to knock on last week, that actually both New Jersey and Massachusetts have put out plans requesting thousands of megawatts of wind power. And so as we kind of, stall over whether we're blocking people's gorgeous view from Ocean City, we're falling further and further behind with our fellow states on the East Coast. And we should be generating that power here. We should be leading in green infrastructure. It's crazy to me that, as we're renovating a lot of our schools, we don't have solar panels or green roofs. And so I'm excited to work on those issues if I get to Annapolis.
Thank you. Jared, thank you very much. Emily?
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Shetty. I'm asking for one of your 3 votes for the House of Delegates. Thank you for this great question. Like Jared, I am also supported by the Sierra Club, very proud to have their support. And I also support the 100% green energy bill. I think it's a great move, both from a messaging perspective as well as an investment in leading the way for Maryland to take on the incredible challenge of our time of mitigating climate change. One of the best aspects of that bill is that it actually phases out some of the dirty energy sources that currently qualify for a renewable energy portfolio standard. Burning trash and burning wood are included as part of those phased out dirty energy sources. So I would like to see us adopt this bill, and if elected, I would strongly support this measure. Thank you.
Joel?
Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Rubin, and thanks as well for being here tonight. It's wonderful to have this conversation. One of the main motivations for why I entered public service was my service in the Peace Corps, where I was an environmental educator working in rural communities on how to reclaim the environment. And that led me to a career where I began to explore the power, frankly, of renewable energy and clean energy. I ran energy programs for the Department of Energy and solar energy primarily, leading an initiative nationally to reclaim brownfield sites and to use those sites for producing clean power. So I'm bringing that background to this fight, and it really is a jobs issue, but it's also about protecting our climate. Climate change is real. We see it every day. And to make sure that we have clean energy jobs that work for our economy, we have to make sure that we're also clarifying the value and the importance of science in our curriculum and in our communities. And that's what I'll bring to Annapolis. Thank you.
Leslie?
Thanks. Can I take this out? Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Leslie Milano. I'm also running for delegate in District 18. Of course, a lot of us will agree with the same sentiments. I do also support the 100% bill. I would support the 50% Clean Energy Jobs Act as well. It's important to us in terms of creating green jobs in economically depressed areas and things of that nature, and moving the ball forward in the direction that we need to. What I would bring to the table is I think we need to reframe our environmental issues away from a moral narrative and into an economic narrative, because that is something that hits home more when we're trying to create buy-in for the types of legislation like this one. It had to be removed, the 100% and the 50%, they both didn't make it. And I think that is one of the keys for us. We need to invest in renewable energy in our state. We have an opportunity like no other time right now, given all of the different types of technology that we have for transporting that type of energy. So I would strongly push on investing in renewable energy, not just the 2 offshore wind contracts that we have, but solar and geothermal and other types as well. And I think that once we start creating more energy here in our state that we're using in our state, we can start to sell that energy to surrounding states. And that's a whole growth opportunity for us in terms of new revenue.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank
On
you.
to Helga. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helga Luest. I'm also running for delegate. And I also am pro-environment and absolutely supportive of clean energy and renewable energy. I am, in fact, the only low-carbon footprint campaigner, low-carb campaign that I'm running. You won't see yard signs out for me. Even my business card is half the size of a regular business card, because I want to be very conscious of walking the walk when it comes to the environment. And I think that that's important. Yard signs aren't biodegradable or recyclable, and so I opted not to do that. And trying to find other ways to be visible instead. I will say that I think incentives are really important to consumers. I'm very concerned about Trump's tariffs on solar. I think we need to be mindful of that and do more in Maryland to incentivize people to turn to solar. And also a big piece of what will turn the tide is community education. We know even from the bag tax, the grocery bag tax, right? people didn't really think about it until it started to affect them and affect them monetarily. And then they started to understand that plastic is really a problem in the environment. We as leaders need to do a lot more in terms of educating the community and educating the public on the need for solar, the need for wind energy and renewable energy, and why that's important, and promote other ways of transportation besides using our cars.
Thank you, Helga. We're going to move on to Mila. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mila Johns, and you may have guessed I'm running for delegate. I want to thank you guys for skipping the Caps game 2 of the playoffs, to come out and join us. So you guys are very dedicated. Like everyone up here, I support the 100% renewable bill. I'm with Leslie. I would also go with the 50 just to get it started and rolling. But one of the things that I do support is a carbon fee and dividend policy. The idea is that you put a tax on carbon emissions at the source. It's about $20 a ton, and the revenues that are collected are redistributed. 60% is given back to taxpayers, and with a special focus on lower income and older citizens, and the remaining 40% goes into investing in the green jobs and the green technologies that we need to be focusing on in order to do this. I don't want to go over my time.
Thank you. Ron.
Good evening. My name is Ron Franks, and as you know, I'm running for delegate. I believe the question was, how should Maryland move forward, correct? So for me, I think the first thing, we've mentioned the renewable energy plan for 100%. I think that's a laudable goal. I think the 50 plan might be more possible, seeing as how that's going to be an important piece of all this. So that would be the first thing. Second would be to build out and invest in our solar infrastructure, not only in panel construction, but also in transmission. And then third, deal with the nitrate runoff from the Eastern Shore to make sure we have the Apple programs in place to help get that cleanup in effect. And then also making sure we have enough funds in the reserve funding for dealing with, to maintain the cleanup of the Chesapeake. So that would be my plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Al?
Thank you. I'm Al Carr. I am a delegate representing District 18 since 2007. I'm running for re-election. I just wanted to start off by thanking not only my fellow candidates who are up there. I wanted to thank our moderator, David, our town council and mayor, Tracy, Darren, Connor. A little shout out to our camera folks, Melissa and Rachel, who are recording this, so it'll be rebroadcast on channel 16. So I am so much for the climate that I actually walked here today. I think I'm the only candidate who can brag about that. I also happen to live just a few blocks away. But seriously, I want to echo the remarks that some of the other candidates made about some of these great policies. I signed on to a number of bills during the 2018 session. There was a Clean Energy Jobs Act, there was a 100% Renewable Act. I network with state legislators across the country. I'm really excited about things they've done in Hawaii and Minnesota and other places, and I'd like to take those good ideas and bring them back to Maryland. I support the idea of exploring a carbon tax. I like a lot of small things too, like what the town here is doing with LED lights in this building and in street lights and things like that.
Thanks, Al. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Carhart. Thank you guys so much for having us today. I was raised in Kensington, and it's so nice to be back here. In terms of energy and the environment, it's something that we need to look at holistically. I think we all think that the environment is incredibly important and that we want to pass on a healthy planet to our children. In Maryland, what I think is interesting is when you look at a map at where we're getting our renewable energy, it's from other states. And we have the 2 incinerators in Maryland, which now we're wiping out as the tier 1 for the renewable portfolio standard. So I really think we need to accelerate how we're solving this problem, and that is through solar, but there are a lot of limitations on solar. So we need to work with businesses to help promote solar, look at the possible solution of solar farms, in addition to, I know that I just read that there was a 2-year study being proposed for the wind turbines offshore, well, that's going to be difficult for us to meet our goals if we're going to be hitting some of these barriers. So we need to look at it holistically so that we can solve this problem and move Maryland forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana Beyer, and I ask for your vote. I'd like to second what Al said, thanking everybody for having us here today. This is our third and final forum. I also agree with everybody down the dais here. I supported the 100% bill this year. One thing I'd like to point out, though, it's not just 100% renewable energy. It's the 100% Renewable Energy and Equity Act. And the equity part of it is to protect those communities that would not be able to afford the increased energy costs due to the newer energy. New Jersey protects its people to a maximum increase, I believe, of 6%. So that's something we need to keep in mind all along. I also like what California did this year in passing a bill to require all new construction to have solar. If we legislate that, we can have a revolutionary change here. And also, unfortunately, as we learned last week, we need to do better on stormwater drainage. The whole idea that the rain tax was something that was not acceptable should not be acceptable to us. Ellicott City has now been submerged twice in the past 3 years. We need to do better on stormwater drainage.
Thank you, Dana. Why don't you hold on to the mic? Okay. We're going to go to you next. Just a quick reminder to all the candidates, thank you for that first round. Thank you, audience, for all these great questions. Got more questions than we probably have time to get to. So just a reminder, keep an eye on the timer there. 1 minute to respond. I'll try to gently nudge us along if need be. Dana, to you. Question here. Maryland and Montgomery County stand to reap a significant windfall in the 2018 income tax due to the federal tax bill. What would you do with that windfall?
We have, what I would like to do with it is to ensure that our residents all can afford health insurance going forward. There are many ideas on the block. There is a tax that will be imposed on the insurers this year in order to ensure that, but it's only for 1 year. And my priority in the Senate would be to work on the Finance Committee to ensure that we are all protected going forward. Because this bill, this law, what I call the Tax Scam Act of 2017, is not going to be repealed overnight. But we also have the Kerwin Commission report, which is coming down in December, which is going to promote universal pre-K, improving equity in our public education system. This is all going to cost money, and the fact that we're going to have it here in the state and the county should primarily go for education.
Thank you. So with that tax, with the windfall that we're getting, $380 million of that is going to shore up, as Dana said, our health system, because we have 150,000 people who are going to be, who are in between the wedge between Medicaid and then also the other side, which is employer-funded health insurance. The problem is that Blue Cross Blue Shield is threatening to leave because they're losing a lot of money, so we're using that money. The problem is, like Dana said, that's for 1 year. So we absolutely have to figure out how we're going to solve that. My solution would be we have to expand Medicaid. There's no reason why we should be kowtowing to a bunch of insurance companies because they're threatening to leave us with no insurance at all. So we have to do a better job of either negotiating with them, but I would prefer we should have a single-payer healthcare system where we can expand it so that people don't, so we're not dealing with this every single year and trying to find out where we're going to find another $380 million. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I just wanted to echo the comments of Dana and Michelle. I agree that healthcare and education are the top priorities. We are going through this once-in-a-generation review of our healthcare policy, our education policy, our education needs, and trying to figure out how we can really have world-class schools. We have some stark disparities just within Montgomery County among the school systems that we have to deal with. And the zip code that you live in should not determine the quality of your education. So we have some work to do. Education is my top priority, and healthcare.
I think you're going to hear this a lot on this question, but I tend to agree with those who spoke before me. I think when you have faced with an opportunity like this, it's time to, a budget is always supposed to reflect your values, right? And there isn't a politician in Annapolis that won't get up and grandstand with a teacher and make sure they're in there for a photo op. And if we get this money, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. So we should make sure that we don't have another educator having to buy an eraser, paper, pencils, things like that, to make sure that their classroom functions appropriately. So that's priority number one. Priority number two, when we talk about healthcare, is to make sure, like just informed me, that we cover that gap. So for me, I think if those are the values that we say we espouse, we definitely have to start putting the money, put this benefit where our mouth is, where we've been talking. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to echo a refrain on that, which is we need to put the money towards education primarily, and I would say specifically school construction. That is an issue that we are desperately behind on in this county, and we have overcrowded schools. We have schools like Lee Middle School that aren't safe. They have lead in the water, mold in the schools. That's just unacceptable in Montgomery County. And I agree we need single-payer health care, and that needs to be a priority, but that's not something that's going to be accomplished in a one-and-done windfall.
So I agree also education needs a lot more attention. I think we should be promoting social emotional learning with grade school kids in particular. I think that's the best option we have for bullying and violence prevention with our kids, and to raise kids with the kind of skills that they need to navigate across their lifespan in a good way. I also think that we should have chief resilience officers in every county of the state, because with severe weather and climate change, we have an increased need to really look at things like the building codes. Are they going to be able to withstand the windstorms that we have, the hurricanes that we have, the amount of rainfall that we have? And something that's often not talked about, but the mental health impact, something called solastalgia. As you see your environment start to change, that there's a kind of depression that comes along with that change. And the mental health impact of climate change is something that really isn't talked about very much. Last point is that there are a lot of changes from the Trump administration, and this is, they're all affecting how the states manage. And we're seeing that now in block grants, where states are just given huge chunks of money, but no technical assistance to implement. We're seeing it with the opioid funds, where 30% on average from the states was sent back to the federal level.
Thanks,
so
Helga.
I think that's something we need to think about.
Thank you. Go ahead, Leslie.
Thanks so much. When you have a pot of money that you didn't previously have, one of the ways to best assess how to use that is something that is not a recurring cost. Because if you spend it all on more teachers, you're not going to necessarily have that revenue stream. The way that we should use that type of money is to attack the overcrowding in schools. And the best way that we can do that is to use it to buy land, because that is one of the biggest problems that we have in Montgomery County, where land is very expensive, and we need the funds for construction, but really a large part of that is purchasing the land in order to create the additional school space that we need. I'll just end there. Thank you.
Thanks. A windfall creates an opportunity to invest. And when we look at the windfall, we have to keep a mind's eye on down the road investments where these dollars can be utilized to create sustainable financial benefits to our region, to our budget, to the state. As many of you may know, our business climate is somewhat stagnant. We have not had significant business growth over the past decade here in Montgomery County. And that needs to change, and we need to increase our tax base from the business community in order to be able to pay for school construction, to be able to pay for health care, to be able to pay for helping seniors to retire in place. I'm proud of an endorsement I received from the teachers at the Education Association because of my commitment to public schools and education. We need to make sure that we're building revenue streams that are going to be long-term. And that means using this windfall for loans, for small businesses. It means ensuring that we're investing in education up and down the chain, including in our community colleges, making college affordable and the like.
Thank you for this great question. Again, my name is Emily Shetty, for those who came in a bit later, and I'm running for delegate. I think we need to be investing in three things: single-payer health care here in Maryland, our public education, and the people. So as one of the only health policy experts running for delegate here, I've worked in this space at the federal level for 10 years. I come at it from a variety of perspectives. I'm a patient with a chronic autoimmune disorder. I'm the daughter of a retired nurse, so I see the healthcare system from the provider's perspective as well. And I'm a policy wonk that's worked in this space for 10 years. We can and should be the first state in the country to successfully implement single-payer healthcare. And we can do it because we've already taken the steps necessary to begin that process. So we should use some of the money to begin to establish the fund necessary to invest in the healthcare system. Public education, school construction dollars, and whatever remains, we should bring back to seniors and low-income people here in Montgomery County.
Thank you. So I started my career as a high school teacher in Baltimore City, and I think a lot about the kids I worked with and the families I worked with as I've progressed through my career and worked in different policy levels to try to improve the lives of the folks that I worked with. And to me, the number one priority is education, and specifically within education, it's a down payment on universal access to early learning, whether it's childcare, preschool, or pre-K. You know, it's shameful that we in Maryland are one of the worst states in terms of subsidies and reimbursement rates. We're nestled in between West Virginia and the District of Columbia that have almost near universal preschool and pre-K. Really, one of the proudest moments of my career was helping to build that in the District of Columbia, and it's shameful to me that we in Maryland can't have that. It is a school readiness issue to make sure that families and kids are ready to go to school for kindergarten. It's an economic development issue because no matter what income level you are, if you don't have a safe place for your child to spend the day while you're at work, you can't work. And it should not bankrupt a family in Montgomery County or anywhere in the state to have children. So that would be my number one priority, a down payment toward universal access to early learning. Thanks.
Why don't you hang on to that mic there, Jared, and I'm going to go to the next question to you and work back this way. Next question is, do you support getting Montgomery County out of the liquor business, either immediately or gradually?
Yeah, so I will say, this may not be a popular answer. It is not a priority for me. It's something that I think if the county is, the county council pushes forward a plan that ultimately the state needs to approve, I would not stand in the way of that. But I'll say for a couple of reasons. We've talked about some of the budget deficit issues. I think we need to make sure that that's $30 to $40 million worth of revenue that we would lose. I had the opportunity to tour the liquor warehouse last fall. I would encourage all of you to go out there. It's actually fascinating, especially if you're into logistics. And it's night and day from what it was years ago, from what I've been told. It is a modern system. The person who now runs the liquor warehouse ran one of the largest private distribution warehouses and systems in the country prior to coming here. And one of the things that he told me that really stuck with me was, if we turned it over to a private company, nobody would care about safety. And Montgomery County has one of the lowest drunk driving rates in the country because we have a public entity that controls it. He has plans to increase the revenue by managing the business more intelligently, smarter. That's another way to put a down payment on universal access to pre-K. And so it is not a priority for me. The other thing I will say is, I know we talk a lot about growing nightlife. One of the biggest ways I think that we could grow nightlife instead of privatizing the liquor industry is funding Metro so it stays open past 11 o'clock. And so that our restaurants in Bethesda and Silver Spring don't have to close at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Jared. On to Emily.
A lot of great points raised there. So I agree with a lot of what Jared has said, and will expand on a little bit of my thoughts on the $30 million of revenue that's generated. So that revenue pot is bonded revenue that's used for school construction dollars primarily. We have a backlog of projects here in Montgomery County, and moving our system to a private system not only will lose 350 jobs for unionized workers here in Montgomery County, but it also doesn't guarantee that we'll get that revenue back. One of the proposals that's been floated is, well, we should tax the liquor and then that will raise more than the revenue that's raised currently. We're not guaranteed to get that tax dollars back to Montgomery County. The taxes on the sale of alcohol stay at the state level, and the state decides how to appropriate the money from the general fund. The $30 million that we're currently generating stays within Montgomery County and funds a lot of the projects that we all enjoy. So for that reason, I do not currently support disbanding the liquor monopoly.
Thanks. So this is great because this is when I'm going to take a moment to introduce my wife, Nomini. Yay, there she is. Because I have a very simple answer. Thanks for being here, hon. No, I do not support the county getting out of the liquor business for all of the reasons Jared and Emily have pointed out from a revenue stream perspective. Also, frankly, it's working. I know that there are arguments that it's not working, that somehow access is denied, or perhaps service isn't good, or quality. I'm not sure. I don't see that in my daily life, and I really do think we need to try to get some other priorities on the radar screen of the council that are more pressing and urgent, like affordable housing and like environmental protection and like healthcare. And ensuring that we have safe pedestrian walkways. I know that's a big issue here in Kensington. It's a big issue in Chevy Chase, where I'm on the town council. We have significant construction happening around our borders, and it's dangerous, and we need to be putting time into that at the council rather than the question of liquor privatization.
Thank you.
So I disagree with my three colleagues here 100%. I think it's very short-sighted in terms of looking at $30 million a year, which is a sluggish growth rate for all of the liquor stores and the wholesale that we're doing. So 300 union jobs are important, but they would be going from McGeo to the Teamsters, because there is also, in the private sector, unionized liquor control, I guess it would be liquor sales positions. Looking at that $30 million in revenue, if you want to talk about a windfall, if we sell the licenses, that is a windfall of revenue that we are going to have on a regular basis annually. And we are going to be able to do all the things that we're talking about doing up here right now, which sound great, but we don't have money for, because the state is in a very bad economic situation. Our debt is growing at 5%, and that is the highest growing line item for our budget at a state level. Here in Montgomery County, we're doing terribly as well. 19 businesses that we had started in 2016. I could go on, and I'm happy to talk about it with you afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm not a supporter of the monopoly. I don't think that it's healthy for our county and ultimately for our communities. With any change, I think it needs to be managed carefully. And of course, we don't want our schools to go without, so that's why it's important to have smart leadership at the county level and also at the state level to ensure that we're making the kind of decisions that don't leave any shortfalls or shortcuts, and that work towards retraining the jobs, or retraining the individuals who would be changing jobs away from the liquor control to other positions. Right now, many people travel outside of Maryland, actually, to get their liquor. So that's revenue that we're missing out on. And I think we need to consider that. We also need to do more for small businesses and restaurants. We saw in 2016 the number of new small businesses in the county that registered and licensed with the county was 19 small businesses. And I hear all the time from restaurants and small businesses that have liquor available that it's just really hard. Even Seven Locks Brewing, they explained to me that they can only brew a certain amount of beer because once they get to a certain point, if they reach that cap, then they fall into a different classification, and it puts them out of, into a much different business model. So I think we need to be thinking about that.
We're going to move on. Thank you.
Hi. I don't support the liquor monopoly. I've gotten some heat for that over the course of this campaign. But Leslie is exactly right. These 350 union jobs are still going to be union jobs if we privatize. They're just not going to be McGeo jobs, and they don't like that. And I understand nobody wants to lose their union members to another union, but that's no reason to inconvenience an entire county of people. Also, most of the money does not go towards school construction currently. It goes towards paying the service on our debt payments every year, which keep going up because we are growing at our debt at 5%, and we're creating 16 new businesses in the last year. We hear all the time from restaurateurs, especially Dish and Dram has been one of the people I've sat down with, the owners of that, and they've walked through how the liquor monopoly is so impactful for their business that a lot of times new restaurants don't even want to start here. And that's something we need to change. We need to change that atmosphere, and we can do it by getting rid of the DLC.
I just want to start off by congratulating the person who wrote that question. I don't know if that means you get a chicken dinner, but you definitely get a little bit of a difference between the candidates, which is something that will benefit everybody in this room. For me, I think two things. First, due to financial entanglements with the funding for the Liquor Commission, whether insidiously or ingeniously, pick your adjective, it's improbable that we'll be able to get rid of it right away. So I think what we should do is look at this time that we're entangled in that way at strategies strategies that we can use to get out of it, and then what we're going to do in a way going forward. Because for me personally, right now it's a philosophical question since we really can't do anything about it tomorrow. And philosophically, I don't agree with the DLC, and I think we should use this opportunity to come up with plans and make sure that when we do finally transition out of it, that we have the systems in place to make sure that we don't skip a beat. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So when it comes to alcohol laws, alcohol policies, I try to focus on the needs of ordinary people, ordinary small businesses, and it's interesting we're having this conversation in Kensington. I moved here, my wife and I, 20 years ago, and it was a dry town. So we got into politics. I was first a citizen activist. I got elected to the town council, served for a few years, then became a delegate. So one of the things that I'd worked on in both those roles is getting the alcohol laws changed right here in Kensington. Now we have some great restaurants like Frankly Pizza, Dish and Dram, K-Town Bistro. We just passed another law I worked with the mayor and council to help Old Town Market be able to sell cold beer, and the new place across Knowles to be able to open up with a Class D license. So look, private does not necessarily equal better. Just compare Pepco, which is a private company, utility, with WSSC. They're a public water utility. I am not a supporter of automatic privatization. There's not a consensus on it anyway at the county level. I think we can do a lot of things to improve the system we have. I think ordinary people care about things like, can I buy beer and wine at the grocery store? And I'd like to work towards that.
Thanks, Al.
One of the things that a lot of people on this panel have brought up is the $30 million that we get every year in revenue from the liquor, Montgomery County running it. And the reality is that if we only get 17 cents back on the dollar, if we eliminate it, it all goes to Maryland, and what hope do we have of getting it back? I think that's what's really driving it, as far as I can tell from listening to Ike Leggett and the people that make the decisions. That being said, I think that we also need to think about moving towards not having it. I don't believe in it. I think that, but I don't think, like Ron said, I think we really need to take a little bit of time and have it maybe over a 5-year span where we're offering it, we're eliminating it in some places, we're closing down some of the stores, and we're with a concerted effort working with private companies in order to see, okay, how is this working in this environment, instead of just jumping out. This seems like we're either deciding in or out instead of seeing whether it's plausible and how it would work and whether it would generate. I mean, I have friends also who shut down a brewery because of the problems that they encountered, and they were in business for 6 years. The licensing was ridiculous, and and I had a long discussion with them, and they were complaining about it. And so I see it from both sides, but I really do think that it's in the best interest of our community and our small businesses to move away from it, but I think we need to do it in a responsible way.
This is interesting in that this is the one question that we've gotten over 3 forums that there is the greatest divergence of opinion. We don't disagree on single-payer health care, 100% renewable energy. We disagree about this. And because it's been 3 forums, we've honed our talking points very well. So I would like to see the next county executive bring us all in to help solve this problem. Because to me, the fundamental issue, we're talking political philosophy, is the county shouldn't have a monopoly. We're the only county with it. It's rather antiquated. Let's find a new way. But everybody down this row actually had a good idea, a very good point that needs to be taken into consideration. So I think this is government at its best, even though we're not all in the government yet, but this is how it should work. So I commend everybody for thinking deeply about this and moving us forward.
Great. Thank you all very much. Next question, since we're here in the town of Kensington, I thought I'd take a very local issue and bring it forward. And it is as follows. In the past years, the District 18 delegation has worked hard and successfully to direct bond money to stabilizing the Warner Circle historic buildings. If Parks and Planning and local communities supported new bond appropriations, would you be willing to support new funding? Dana?
Yes.
All right, let's do a lightning round. All right, yes, no.
Yes, I think it's incredibly important that we preserve our history in this community.
Yes, voted for it before, would vote for it again.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes.
Also going to go out on a limb and say yes.
We're starting a wave here. I'm saying yes.
I'll say yes as well, and I've had a lot of great conversations with community leaders about this issue, and I'm really excited to help.
Absolutely yes, and also for Kensington, the issue of the Park Pavilion and other issues we should be talking about in terms of Annapolis support.
Yes, and thank you for the Warner Circle community activists for hosting a reception before this to talk about this.
Absolutely, yes. I'm really honored and grateful to have the support of Mayor Furman and Councilmember Crimmins in my run, and I see some really familiar faces who've spent years working on this issue, and would be proud to help carry it in Annapolis.
All right, so let's, this one might it's okay, Claude. All right, this one may not be one-word answers, but this is also from the audience. The question is, what percentage of your campaign funds come from developers? Start with you, Jared.
As far as I know, none. I am actually very proud. We were recently gave the Small Donor Seal of Approval Award from one of the public financing organizations in Montgomery County. And as of our last report, which was filed last week, 40% of our donations came from folks within the district, which was wonderful. Just, I think, a representation of the amount of support that we have within District 18, and it was from all corners. You know, that's the kind of campaign we've run. We've canvassed in every precinct. We're actually coming back through, so if we haven't knocked on your door, we probably will shortly. But I think it's zero.
Zero as well. Also have the same endorsement from Represent Maryland. Very proud to have it. My average donation is $111. I have been very proud to accept about 50% of my donations from in-state donors and I think D18 donors as well. And I'm really excited to be running a very grassroots campaign. We've hit 8,200 doors, held 20 meet and greets, and have 3 more coming up.
I don't think the developers want to give me money, frankly, and that's because I've been very concerned about the way the developers have been in the town of Chevy Chase and in Liddensville and in other areas impacted by the Purple Line construction, the way they've been engaging the communities, which is that they haven't been. We have seen a significant amount of concern in communities impacted by construction, and as a town council member, I took a vote last fall to try to put some pressure on the Purple Line Transit partners to get them to pay attention to the community's needs. So I'm sure I got their attention on the opposite side. I'm also proud to have the small donor designation and over 100 individual donors. This is a grassroots campaign. I'm very proud of the way we do it here in District 18. Generally speaking, we're all engaged. We're all walking the streets. We're all talking to citizens, to residents, voters, and it's a real testament to the strength of our democracy here in this district.
0% from me, from developers. I also have not taken a penny from corporations. I also have not taken any money from PACs. Every dollar that I have that I've gotten in the form of a donation has come from individuals like you. I have knocked on many, many doors throughout this district along with many volunteers. And so we are very excited that we've gone through the streets of Kensington. I've met many of you when I knocked on your doors. I also chatted with many of you about issues like Warner Mansion and what we could do. So I'm very excited to also have the support of several people in this room, and I'll be making that public shortly. So thanks so much.
So $0 from developers for me, and 100% of my funding, my campaign contributions come from individuals.
Sorry about that. 0% comes from developers, and I have $250 from one union PAC, so very much not taking money from developers. That's basically, yeah. I don't know all of the in-depth details. I'm very impressed by everybody who does, but you could ask my husband, who is in the back, who's my treasurer, and he probably has all that information memorized.
I guess I can say absolute zero for myself as well. I didn't take it, and for number one, I don't really know any of them. Number two, there's a philosophical difference there. I personally don't believe in having corporate investment into the political process. I think serves as a corrosive effect, no matter what Mr. Romney would say. So I think rest assured that won't be the case. And like everyone else, I am proud to run against so many people who have been so dedicated to doing this in a grassroots manner and getting out there and really knocking on doors and finding out what the concerns of the community are and getting them raised and addressed. So I want to thank you to you guys for opening your doors in your homes, and also thank you for everybody for running a good race. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The General Assembly doesn't really regulate land use, so developers aren't that interested in contributing to us. But I think what the question is trying to get at is, is your campaign a grassroots campaign? Are you taking money from special interests, et cetera? And so for me, I'm really proud of my campaign. Like some of the other candidates up here, I exist on small donations. Most of them come from individuals who live in District 18. I get a few tidbits from family members as well. But I'm also proud of my track record of reform in some of the bills I voted for in Annapolis. I'm proud of the bill that we passed that enabled counties like Montgomery County to have public financing for county council and county executive races. I also support that idea for state legislative races. Thank you.
Zero, and I'm small money certified, and I guess we're all progressive Democrats, right? So it would be shocking if any of us actually were supported by developers. That would kind of run contrary to what we stand for. I'm also small, grassroots, very grassroots, to the point where the majority of my contributions are under $50. Because that's, I want to stand for the people. And so if the people aren't the ones who are contributing, then I'm not really doing what I'm setting out to do.
Zero also, I haven't asked. So following up on what Al said, we don't have public financing for state races. And in that spirit, since I intend to work on that in the Senate, because I believe we should have it, I haven't asked anybody for more than $150. If they've given me more, I haven't turned it down. But I haven't asked for it, and that makes me feel like I'm taking a step forward into the future to set an example for what I'm going to work for in the Senate.
All right, thank you for that round, Dana. This is going to you, and we'll work our way back. So this question from the audience is, do you agree that all new multi-occupant residential development must accommodate all impacts, including increased danger to pedestrians? If so, how will you ensure that increased residential development will address impact like pedestrian safety, walkability, et cetera?
Well, a lot of that is county-based. There's a zero vision program out there now that I know I support, and I believe a number of other people here who've been certified by the Action Committee for Transit Support.
But once the county approves that development,
yes.
what can you do at the state level to ensure pedestrian and biker safety?
Well, we need to get MDOT to prioritize that. Now we have a Department of Transportation that wants to widen the Beltway, right, and wants to spend billions of dollars to do that. This is a matter of philosophy. We need an administration, this is why we need to beat Hogan in November, that supports public transit, that supports walkability, that supports biking, so that we would focus on that. In so doing, we change the culture and we move things forward because we absolutely need to do it. But right now, all the attention, all the money is going on widening 270 and widening the Beltway, and a lot of this almost feels like it's a fait accompli. I know our gubernatorial candidates are speaking out about it. More needs to be done, otherwise we're going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dana. This is a bigger problem, and I think we need to look at things in a more big, in a big picture way. And we're looking at spending a lot of money on Metro. I'm so pleased that we have dedicated funding now. But I think that's part of a wider solution. Why is Hogan talking about widening the Beltway when we're not even focused on increasing demand for our metro system? I think a lot of the rapid bus transit and all of those are great with the bikes, and everyone has great ideas about how to make more walkable, rideable solutions that are better for our environment as well. But we need to do more to actually incentivize using Metro. And one of the things I don't understand why we don't do, and what I would fight for, is to create more programs where people can get discounts. We don't do that here. Why are students only on ride-ons from 2 to 8? Can students ride for free? DC, they go for free. We don't even have it for colleges. We're talking about expanding Metro to go to the universities in Montgomery College and also to College Park. We need to do more to incentivize people using mass transit, and that's part of the solution of building these walkable areas. We have to develop the infrastructure and commit to it.
Thanks for the question. So pedestrian safety issues, is how I got my start in politics. When I moved here and began as a civic activist and then got on the council, we had fatalities. People were dying in this neighborhood just trying to get across Connecticut Avenue or University Boulevard, either on foot or in a car. And so I worked with my fellow citizens, with my fellow elected officials, and it really does take ordinary citizens, municipalities, if that's appropriate, the state and the county all working together. The numbered roads, those are state roads under the control of state highway. The other roads are either municipal or county. And that focus on safety issues, that's something that I bring to every neighborhood in District 18 that I represent, because those problems are everywhere. There were a lot of mistakes made in the development process of Montgomery County in earlier decades that we're still trying to recover from.
Thank you.
Just to make sure that I'm actually answering your question, can you please repeat it one more
I
time?
think the gist of the question was, as Montgomery County continues to grow and develop, how can you as state lawmakers ensure that we have a pedestrian-friendly community, walkable, bikeable, et cetera?
So essentially what that question is proposing is that somehow at the state level we devise policy or legislation that would impact individual development in a municipality or a locality, right? To me, fundamentally, I think that is something that the state should try to stay away from, because that's why we have lower levels of government, counties and municipalities like here in Kensington. They do a good job of taking into the community's concerns, because here's a scenario I worry about. I worry about the state setting a policy for a minimum, and then there's a development that the community really wants, and it can't be built. Why? Because of this policy, when everyone in the community is actually in agreement on it. And then that creates a burden and a hurdle for them to jump over that wasn't there in the first place. So I think while we should make sure we do everything we can to ensure pedestrian safety and ensure walkability and things like that, I'm weary of the state setting a mandate as to how that actually plays out. Thank you.
Hi. I just participated in the safety walk on Dale Drive over off of 97 a few weekends ago. This is a prime example of where we need to work on addressing pedestrian safety. I was talking to the woman, Corrine, who organized it, and one of the things they're working on and trying to get the local level of government at both the state and the county involved in is the reclassification of Dale Drive as a minor arterial road instead of an arterial road, so that there's more traffic calming devices and stuff that can be put in. I think we can work with our local partners on things like that, on bike lanes, on making sure that there is safe pedestrian walkable communities, especially sidewalks, biker lanes, all of those kinds of things are very important.
So in March, I became a bike commuter to work. And part of my commute goes right along Rockville Pike. I branch out from Kensington, go up the big hill to Old Georgetown Road, and then down to Executive Boulevard. And I can tell you that the 3 blocks of stretch just on Rockville Pike is not great. I mean, I try to use the sidewalk unless I see someone coming, because it really is, it's pretty dangerous. Dana said something that I thought really resonated to one of my core philosophies. She said, you know, talk to MDOT. And this is something you don't often hear from policymakers. I call it leadership beyond legislation. Not every solution is found in policy. And I think we need to talk to MDOT, we need to talk to the county council, we need to find meaningful solutions, and we also need to mobilize people at the grassroots level to speak up. Because if we ask for it, you know, then real change can happen. If you ask, you get, but if you stay quiet, you don't. And I think this is one of those cases where we need to work together and make it happen.
Thanks so much. Again, my name is Leslie Milano, for anybody else who's come in late. So pedestrian safety is very important to me. I actually created a 5-page plan for leaders in Forest Glen who are transit activists who support me. And it details essentially how a delegate can work with a group of community leaders in terms of dealing with the State Highway Authority and other components there. So this is really a perfect example where the county needs to work with the delegation. And I think getting to really good relationships is very key here. What we need here is both funding and a mandate that there is funding for this type of work that's coming from new development contracts, but we also need project management. We need somebody to see this through to completion. And I think as a delegate, you can assume and can count on the fact that I will be a person who will not shy away when it's not exactly something in my wheelhouse. I will help to push on issues such as this, which are very important to me.
So if you want to find a unifying issue in this campaign outside of education, it's pedestrian safety. It doesn't matter where you go around the district, be it in my town, Chevy Chase, along Wisconsin Avenue, Dale Drive, as Mila mentioned, be it East-West Highway, Georgia Avenue, you name it. It's a deep concern. So something has failed, and the state has failed. And what I would do as a delegate, and what I think we need our delegation to do, is to, in Annapolis, be as a state delegation sitting on the desk of the Secretary of Transportation until he gets it right. Because our communities are calling for help and they're not getting it. As a town councilman in Chevy Chase, I know that we're working every day to try to fix the inequities, fix the problems that are happening to our pedestrians along East-West Highway and Wisconsin Avenue, and it is like hitting your head into a brick wall. It is impossible to navigate that bureaucracy alone. We need a powerful, impactful, vocal state delegation to get us over the line, and we need to, I'll close with this, be at the front end of these planning decisions. Many of the problems we're experiencing are because these are coming up at the back end, the communities are not included at the front end, and the result is what we see.
Hi again, my name is Shetty and I'm running for delegate. So our delegation in Annapolis plays a really critical role in working with our state Department of Transportation on issues like this on our state highways. And our state highways here in Montgomery County are really different than state highways across the state. So it's really important that our state delegation brings MDOT here to Montgomery County as frequently as possible to see the unique needs of our somewhat urban environment. We need lower speed limits on some of the state highways in our urban areas that have the highest potential for walkability. So around where this type of development would happen, around transit centers in particular, we need to have lower speed limits, and that's something that our state delegation can work on with our Maryland Department of Transportation. I'm really proud to be the only candidate in the delegate race to have a perfect score from the Action Committee for Transit. They are an organization that actively advocates for investments in public transportation and walkable communities. So if elected, I'll be a really strong voice for us on these issues.
Thanks. I have the unenviable task of agreeing with a lot of what my colleagues have said. As Joel was saying, this is an issue that I hear all the time, and it's something I've spent one of the main reasons I've invested a lot of my time during the campaign in getting to know all of the municipalities within District 18, and we're really unique. We have 9, and I'm really, again, honored and grateful to be endorsed by a number of local elected leaders throughout our municipalities. And this is something that a lot of it, I think, as Helga had said, is using the power of convening. It's bringing together the civic associations, the municipalities, to SHA, to the Department of Transportation to refocus their attention on moving people in ways beyond just in their cars. Some of it is, again, convening. There's also, we do need some legislation. I was talking to folks at WABA, the Washington Area Bike Association. There is no line item in the state budget for bike infrastructure. So we talk about all of these, bike lanes and bikeable, walkable communities, and there's no line item to make those things a reality. And it takes money to create a bike lane that's safe and proper for folks to use. And the other thing I want to just briefly touch on that hasn't been mentioned is really looking at our state highways in terms of access for people with disabilities and seniors. I've talked to a lot of folks, particularly over in Chevy Chase, who told me they don't feel comfortable walking to Bethesda. They literally live on the edge of the town. They're seniors because they can't cross the street quickly enough. And so, little things like that about refocusing our infrastructure priorities to folks with wheelchairs, people who can't move as quickly, to make our community livable for everybody.
Thanks, Jared. Why don't you hang on to the mic? And next question from the audience. This year and with this administration, character matters more than ever. What is one thing each of the candidates has learned about gender in this Me Too election? And I would add to that, the General Assembly passed a anti-sexual harassment bill in Annapolis this year to require that an independent investigator handle harassment complaints involving State House employees. Did that measure go far enough? Jared.
I think it's a great start, but I don't think it went far enough. I will say, obviously, I am not a woman myself. That's pretty obvious. But I was raised by a strong mother, married to a very strong wife. My campaign chair is a woman. My campaign manager is a woman. Most of my core team are women. And I think gender parity and gender equity in leadership positions are paramount. I am proud to be an ally, proud to hopefully be an ally in Annapolis. Very proud that I received a 100% rating from NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland, and will be an advocate and ally on these issues in Annapolis.
So I campaigned for a delegate in 2014, and I've campaigned now, and we've hit a combined total of like 13,000 doors. And for the first time, I got a question a couple weeks ago about, well, what if you're at the doors, what's happening to your son? And I thought, wow, this is kind of like a question from another era. That was a little bit surprising. And I think a lot of female candidates can relate that we often get asked sometimes questions that are a little bit coded like that. And that has been, interesting to see from this perspective. I am really excited about the movement that has happened in Annapolis to really bring some sunlight there and open up the process for investigations to an independent investigator. I would love to see it continue to move forward and see additional progress. I don't know enough about the bill to know whether all potential entities that are impacted in Annapolis are affected by the legislation. For example, I know that staff and legislators are covered, but I don't know if female and male lobbyists are covered or advocates who spend time there. So I'd like to make sure that that's part of it as well.
Thank you.
So Annapolis is opaque, and we need to let the sunlight in, and I think we should go as far as possible to let the sunlight in on this issue. And I have to say I'm thrilled that the Me Too movement is happening now. It's so long overdue. I've been fortunate. I've had experiences professionally. When I was in the Peace Corps, I worked with women's groups in agriculture 24 years ago on women's empowerment activities. That was the U.S. government sponsoring me to go overseas to work on women's empowerment. Same thing at the State Department a decade ago. I worked in the Middle East with helping form business women's activities and create a regional network in the Middle East for business women, with them essentially leading and creating their own economic futures. So I'm glad it's happening here in a very dynamic way. I'm fortunate. I've got 3 daughters. You've met my wife. My mother-in-law lives with us. So we're a house full of women. It's wonderful. My fourth grader told me to wear the pink tie tonight, so clearly I am surrounded by smart women, and again, it's really great to be running in a race like this at this time.
What was the original question?
The original question was, this year and with this administration, character matters. What is the one thing each of the candidates has learned about gender in the Me Too election?
So I'm a working mom. I'm the executive director of a public health organization. And I have 2 children, and they are in public, one is in public school, one will be coming to public school shortly. I'm a member of the PTA. I think that one of the things I learned is that, you know, I'm gonna be totally honest here. When I see some of the endorsements from either individuals or groups that have gone all men, I wonder what we would feel like if we woke up on June 27th and we had a slate of all men. And I wonder what that would feel like. And I think it's quite possible, you know, anything's possible here. I think that what my takeaway there is that we do need diversity of thought. And I'm not suggesting that we need all women. I'm just think that we need a diversity of thought. And one of the perspectives that I think is very important is working parents. And I think that that is a critical voice that we need to have on the delegation.
So I would say probably the most personal thing that I learned in this campaign is that sometimes you can make mistakes. My mistake was that in the last primary election, I voted for Jeff Waldstreicher. And when I filed to run for delegate, Jeff Waldstreicher sat down with me and asked me to leave the delegate race and jump into the Senate race. And then he lied about it to Bethesda Beat. And he never apologized. I'm somebody who has a long 25-year career as a victim advocate at the federal and state level. I'm a congressional award winner for the advocacy work that I've done, and I felt completely disrespected and disregarded by him. And for me, that not only felt it just was very offensive, quite frankly, but it also told me that time's up for him.
I just want to note for folks here in the room and folks who will be watching the rebroadcast, the ground rules were that if anybody was attacked by name, they'd have an opportunity to respond. Obviously, Delegate Waldstreicher is not here with us tonight, so he can't respond. I'm not going to attempt to do that on his behalf, but I will just remind the audience, especially those of you who came in late, Delegate Waldstreicher is in Annapolis on official state delegate business. Mila.
One thing I've learned about gender during this election would be how much we really need more gender parity. I'm going to echo what Leslie said. We have a number of organizations that have issued endorsements for all male slates, including the teachers, which I find especially horrendous given that the vast majority of women are teachers. Teachers are women, I'm sorry. And I'm going to go a step further than Leslie, because I don't think it's a bad thing to say maybe you should vote for all women. To quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you know what? It'll look equal when there are 9 women on the Supreme Court, because that's how many men have always been there. That's what it'll look like when we have gender parity in Annapolis, and we need to do that.
Joel, did you,
so
were you challenged my name? I was checking my notes here.
If there's a reference to those who are on the teacher's slate, will we have a chance to respond?
Why don't we, when we come back around, we'll do that, all right?
Okay.
Great, thanks. Noted.
So the question was, what did I learn, right?
Yeah.
Admittedly, not much, and it's not because I'm a genius, it's because my mom did a good job. I mean, I was raised by a single woman. I come from a family of very, very, very strong women. So, you know, that a lot of the lessons that people are catching up to now were things that were ingrained in me very early. So I guess the big takeaway from me too, for me, is that, you know, we're past the point of just accepting that this is the way things will always be, and we're just going to keep rolling with it. Women have once again decided to stand up and make sure that that isn't the case. which is why you're starting to see so many women run, why you're starting to see so many women take leadership positions. And I think that's all healthy and that's all good, and long may it continue. So there you have it.
Can I just clarify one thing? I wasn't attacking those who were endorsed. I was attacking the MCEA process.
We're going to come back around. Thank you. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you for the questions. So I think one thing that I think about or that I've learned is that we need to do better. Just thinking about everything that's going on. And I am really proud to have been a part of better policies in Annapolis. In case you don't know, our State House in Annapolis had a reputation of being a few decades in the past when it came to how people were treated, how women were treated, and we passed a very good bill. We need to do more, of course, this year that's going to make that better and bring some accountability so that employees or legislators don't have to feel uncomfortable or don't have to go through some of the things that they went through in the past. And we have some very brave female legislators and others who came forward and really pushed for that. So I was proud to support that. I'm glad we have a great crop of women candidates this time. We also had a number of women candidates in 2014. We have a woman mayor who's doing a phenomenal job here in Kensington. And for me as an individual in my campaign, in my office, who I employ, I try to reflect diversity. I've hired a number of fantastic women as well as men.
Thanks, Al. Go ahead, Michelle.
It's about time. I am so thrilled at the number of women that are running, that are expressing themselves, that are saying enough's enough. I am so thrilled that I'm sad it's taken so long for us to get here, but I will tell you, I don't know if I would have had the courage to run but for the Me Too movement. It has empowered so many women to come forward. It has empowered us to embrace our talents. It has taught us that there is nothing that should prevent us from being who we are and really tackling the problems that we see and representing people, everybody, because a lot of us are also mothers and we're caring and we should be in positions of power because I believe that we also we have something to give and we will balance it out. I don't think it should be all men or women. I also think it shouldn't be monochromatic. I think we need to all work together because we are communities, and I think it takes a little bit of everybody bringing their expertise to the table so that we can all have our voices heard.
David, you asked two questions there. You conflated character and gender. On character, I think we all know every day we suffer from the example of the worst character at the top in American history. And we simply cannot tolerate this. It is wearing us down. We need to rise up as we've been doing. We need to fix that. And I'd like to believe that we up here, we liberal Democrats, if Trump were acting like the liberal Democrat he pretended to be when I was a student in New York for all those years and living there and having been raised there, that we wouldn't tolerate his bad character today just because we agreed with his policies. I think character is fundamental. When it comes to gender, I think it's fair to say I'm the only person up here who's seen gender from both sides. I know what it's like to have male privilege. I know what it's like to be perceived as having that kind of power, and I know what it's like to lose it suddenly and have to deal with the consequences. I don't think women are going to make it. We're not going to have equality until we have equity, and that means gender parity in our legislatures, on our executive suites, in school administrations, and not just amongst teachers. You also asked about Annapolis. That bill that was passed at the last minute is far better than nothing. But I've spoken to senior staff and some senior legislators, and they recognize that until we name names, and we only named 3 names this past session, we're not going to fix that problem. We have to clean things out. Harvey Weinstein's been arrested, Bill Cosby's been arrested. It's not enough. We owe this to our own state to fix this.
Thank you, Dana. So in keeping with the spirit of the ground rules, somebody's attacked, they had a chance to respond. Joel feels like he was attacked, if not directly, indirectly, so please, Joel, and if others want to, 30 seconds.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think it's really important to try to not malign the decision-making process of organizations for their endorsements. I'm a certified elementary school teacher, a brother of professors, son of a professor. I've taught. I was on email last night with one of my children's teachers about her math scores and another one earlier in the week. So I think we all bring a lot to the table, and we need to just take the high road when it comes to organizations that are expressing support for different candidates.
And if I could just add something, I think the
30 seconds.
issue here was that four of us, right? The four female delegate candidates were not invited to do an interview and questionnaire with MCEA. And Joel Rubin, who had filed after most of us, was invited, and that was the issue.
So that's not accurate, and I'm sorry that you had to make it personal, but I actually did file on time, and I did send in my information on time, and I did interview on time, and that's just not accurate, and I have the records for that. And I think that you're implying that somehow the endorsement's not merited, which is disappointing.
I think we're gonna move on. Thank you both for that exchange. Dana, I'm going to start back with you on something different.
Completely
this
different,
question from the
or
audience:
just
what
different?
are your views on establishing a financial literacy requirement for high school seniors?
I've actually spoken with Superintendent Jack about that. My father did my brother and me a great service. He was an accountant and a computer scientist, and he sat us down when we were both 12 years old and taught us how to balance a checkbook. Some of you may remember what those are, but that was very important. Getting your own savings account, whether it was a Christmas club or a Hanukkah account, really helped teach me the value of money. And then when I went out and got jobs when I was younger, that was also critically important. I agree with the superintendent, and I know that he is planning on initiating a requirement that all our students have some degree of financial literacy. These days with Excel spreadsheets probably and the like, but I believe it's critical, and it's part of the larger movement towards back to vocational training, to give students options. If they want to do shop, if they want to do mechanical drawing, if they want to do auto repair and all the rest, there are a lot of guys, particularly, who really aren't into academics, and we should provide alternatives for them. But everybody, boys and girls, really do need to learn financial literacy, because in this world, you really can't depend on anybody else for that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, financial literacy is just so near and dear to my heart. Before I opened Dynamite Gymnastics Center, I launched the Financial Literacy Foundation in DC, where I taught tens of thousands of kids financial education. It's so critical. And the reason I started it was I learned that the #1 reason for academic failure in college wasn't because of academics. It was because of financial mismanagement. And that prompted me to start this foundation and to teach in public high schools. We taught elective courses in DC schools. I taught at homeless shelters. I taught everywhere I could, any high school and up, young adults, and it was amazing to me the number of kids who didn't understand what credit was. They were afraid of banks, and we have the same issues here. I run Dynamite Gymnastics, and I have a lot of students, and I'm always teaching them financial education. They don't know how to fill out their tax forms. Well, this is a huge problem that we have to solve, and it needs to be done in schools because not everyone has a parent who can help them with this.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I agree with the idea of teaching more about financial literacy. Like Dana, I was taught by my mother. My grandmother was given a savings account and my passbook, and enjoyed making deposits and getting the little stamp in the book. And now that I'm a father and I have 3 boys of my own, they're all in Montgomery County Public Schools, you know, I try to think back about the lessons that I learned and how do I best impart that to my kids. But yeah, I think that's very practical and something that's really important.
I agree that we should do that, and I'm kind of surprised that it isn't ubiquitous already. Specifically, if you're talking about preparing kids to enter the world, a world where nine out of 10 of them are going to have to find a way to finance their higher education. And not knowing what the ramifications of the loans you're looking at and those things, it seems kind of ridiculous that we don't already do that, doesn't it? So I think that would be something that we should definitely try to implement as soon as possible. Thank you.
Hi, for anyone that came in late, I'm going to reintroduce myself. I'm Mila Johns. I 100% support the idea of financial literacy as part of the high school curriculum. I think we might even want to start younger in middle school. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, so I want to echo what Ron said. I did not understand what I was doing. I didn't have, like Dana said, or Michelle said, I didn't have someone there who knew what I was signing. And I found myself in a whole host of financial trouble with student loans and reconsolidation, and it is incredibly impactful, especially for my generation of people who think we're never even going to be able to buy homes and have children and get married and settle down and raise a family and start our lives. And we need to prepare our children better for that, and if we don't, it's a dereliction of duty.
So I have kids that are in middle school. I actually am a mom of twins, single mom, and they're in 8th grade, and they both have had financial education in middle school, starting in 7th grade, but even more so in 8th grade, and it's great because my son is becoming quite the wheeler and dealer. If I see a for sale sign in the store, he's always like, Mom, that's not a good deal because look, you know, we could go here and there's greater percentage off and you'd be better to wait. And so it's great that the kids are learning at a young age what value is and how much things cost and what that actually means. I also think that one of the great programs we have in Montgomery County is the Student Service Learning Hours. And we could be redirecting some of that time or encouraging students to be using some of their SSL hours to work with retired accountants, working in shelters, and working with either domestic violence survivors or maybe refugees, other people in the community that might need some assistance. They could team together. And I think sometimes kids really take an interest in learning when they also feel like they're appreciated and giving back. So if we could do some of that in that context, I think it would help.
Thank you. I'm Leslie Milano. In terms of financial literacy, of course, and I think that, again, I agree with Mila that we could bring that down to other grades as well. I think we also need financial literacy for the adult population too. And I mean that in regards to a lot of the things we're talking about up here. They cost a lot of money. I've heard, not candidates here, but I've heard candidates in different forums talk about big, really big ideas. And I asked one offline, how are you gonna pay for that? And the person said, well, we're either gonna have to go into debt or raise taxes. That's not a good solution. So I think what we need to do is focus on 2 components, and these are actually on my website underlying all of the different topic areas that I'm focused on as a strategic approach, which is financial and fiscal responsibility, and then economic growth. I have a 3-tiered economic growth plan, and I'm happy to discuss all of that with you after this event.
Hi, I'm Joel Rubin, and thanks for those of you who've come in the middle of the discussion. It's been a great one. And I want to talk about what I was doing this afternoon with my 1st grade daughter. She came back with a piece of paper from school. They have a book fair. She's earned equivalent to $120 worth of credits and wanted to figure out what to do with the paper because it asked her to identify and then cost out what each product would be that she would purchase. So we went over it, and she got it. And this is how it starts. One by one, little by little, 1st grade and forward, we need to all be financially literate. I'm proud of her for doing it. I think that we have a long way to go as a society, as Leslie points out. We have to really up our game when it comes to math and science. We need to recognize that we're not just competing with other parts of Maryland or Virginia. We're competing with Beijing. We're competing with New Delhi. We're competing around the world. And we are doing a disservice to our young people if we're not getting them financially literate and comfortable and competent in math and science.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Shetty. So I think it will be hard-pressed to find a single candidate anywhere in the country who disagrees with this question. So I'm going to take it a bit further. I think we need to, in addition to teaching financial literacy in schools, we need to be teaching students as well as adults on how to protect your identity and protect yourself from financial fraud. My godmother was the victim of a massive financial fraud here in Maryland. She lost her entire life savings, over $100,000, had to sell her home that she lived in for 40 years. It was a devastating, devastating situation. And I think one of the things that we need to do is not just look at educating starting from our school system, but also continuing that education and including our seniors in this through our senior centers here in Montgomery County, providing really easy materials and classes on the importance of protecting your identity and what you can do to mitigate and prevent financial fraud from occurring.
Thanks. I go back to one of the experiences that always sticks out in my mind. My first year teaching in Baltimore, I taught government, and part of the curriculum towards the end of the year was teaching the Federal Reserve and fiscal policy. And I remember the Friday before we were going to start teaching it the following week, I asked my students some real basic questions about banks, and I was horrified that some of my students, and these were juniors and seniors, didn't even know how banks worked. And that's something that stuck with me. It's a reason why, we, instead of taking a day or two, we took over a week to teach the basics when I was teaching. And when I've helped run youth development programs in DC public schools. When I worked in the chancellor's office, we created an internship program within central office, and I helped run a program in Baltimore City as well. We teach financial literacy, we teach fiscal responsibility for college. I'm a big proponent of creating the sort of, they're referred to different ways, but sort of the baby accounts, where specifically for low-income families, you create a bank account, you seed some money when a child is born. It creates a culture of savings, creates a culture of financial literacy, helps provide for college. The other thing I will say, I know it's been mentioned around fiscal responsibility. The one thing I will say is, as much as I'm in support of this, I want to make sure it's not another unfunded mandate that's put down on local school districts. So I actually think this is a perfect opportunity for public-private partnership. We have a lot of really great community banks in Maryland that are already doing a lot of these programs, M&T Bank in Baltimore in particular. And so I think this is a role where we can bring folks from the community into the schools. It's vocational training, as Dana was saying. Maybe we can grow some bankers, responsible bankers, and really grow a new crop of financially literate students. Thanks.
Jared, do keep the mic. We're going to move on.
A quick announcement?
Sure, Dana.
I just want to welcome former Mayor Pete Fosselman to the crowd.
Hello, Mayor Fosselman. All right, Jared, to you. So I've got a couple of questions up here about guns, so I'll give you this one. What is your position on sensible gun laws, and can you speak to things you would do if elected to reduce gun violence in Maryland? And I would add, obviously, Maryland has very, very tough gun laws, so what specifically more should we do in Maryland to reduce gun violence?
Yeah, that's a really critical question, and I made the conscious decision of wearing my orange tie. I think June 1st, is Wear Orange Day in recognition of sensible gun policy. It's an issue that again is deeply impactful to me, from the kids I worked with in Baltimore when I was a teacher, the kids I still work with. It's the reason why I helped run a campaign in 2013 to pass the Firearm Safety Act that helped us get some of those incredibly difficult gun laws. We banned assault weapons, we banned high-capacity magazines, we put in place one of the toughest background check regimes in the country. I was one of the founding board members of a group called Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence that worked hand in glove with then State Senator Frosch, now our Attorney General, to pass that legislation, and I've continued to advocate in Annapolis. And we got a lot of great wins last session, but there's still more that we can do. Specifically, one of the areas that I would really like to explore is creating mandatory biometric trigger locks. One of the big pushbacks you get back from gun owners as well, don't penalize responsible gun owners. Well, there you go. The only person, as far as I'm concerned, who should be able to fire a gun is the person it's licensed to. And if you code it to the fingerprint, that's how you ensure that.
Thank you. So I am very proud to share that one of the community activities I do in my spare time is I am the founder and the co-chair of the advocacy committee within the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County. Before Donald Trump was elected, our now 60-year-old organization had about 240 members. We now have 700 members, just the silver lining, I guess. And my job is to help educate and mobilize our membership on issues that impact women and families in Annapolis and in Rockville. And one of the bills we actively advocated for was ensuring that convicted domestic violence offenders were required to surrender their weapons, and there were some enforcement mechanisms put into place into an existing law. So really proud of the work that we did there. I am also proud to share that I'm one of many candidates here at the table to have received the Moms Demand Action Gun Sense Candidate Distinction. I know that Jared has it as well, and as well as others here. And one of the things I'd specifically like to work on is making sure that Maryland has a requirement for the safe storage of firearms within a home. Many of the tragedies that we've seen happen are when usually children, either accidentally or intentionally, seek access to a gun within a home that's legally purchased. So we need to make sure that guns are safely stored and that there are heavy penalties for not doing so.
So yes, as well, I have the Moms Demand Action designation. And I want to talk about how impactful this has been also on our children. My daughter, Rainika, who's in 6th grade, she came back the day of the Parkland shooting back home and had the word 17 written on her forearm for the 17 who were killed in Parkland. And then when we organized and we went down to the march, the kids' march, she made a sign. And all the sign said was, "Don't shoot me." And if you think about that, Montgomery County, our children are thinking about, will I get shot in school? And this is not unique to us. So we have got to take this bull by the horns. I'm angry about it. I worked for a senator 10 years ago in Congress, Senator Frank Lautenberg, who spent years trying to close the gun show loophole. He failed to do it, not through his own fault, but we are talking about tough lobbies on guns, and they're coming after us. They're trying to do reciprocity around the country to allow concealed carry. We have to block that. We're going to have to do proactive measures like the banning assault weapons, but we're also going to have to play defense and keep our eyes open as to what's coming here from outside the state.
Thank you. I'm Leslie Milano. I also have received the Moms Demand Action Gun Candidate distinction, but I also received another endorsement from a group called Leap Forward that deals with gun safety. The question in terms of what can we do is, I think, twofold. One is in Annapolis, and one is here at home. So in Annapolis, I agree with Emily in terms of safe storage. There are many countries that have basically a list of recommendations of how they do it, and I think that we should be focused not only on states like California and Connecticut that have strong gun laws, but we should be looking to other countries as well for what they do. We are a small blue state with a veto-proof majority, and we can do very tough things. We can lift that up for the rest of the states to do as well. We could do that with our 2013 assault weapons ban, and we should be doing so. But here at home, I'm a working mom with a public school daughter, and no one has called me. No one has asked me to come to a town hall. No one has told me about a community meeting about gun violence prevention. We need to be doing that here, now. And so that's one of my priorities. One of my top priorities is that we will be not only pushing for legislation in Annapolis, but we right here at home will create a task force, which is law enforcement, PTA, teachers, administration, and we're gonna figure out very soon, not in 5 years, 3 years, we're gonna figure out now how to make our schools safer.
So I'm also a candidate who has the distinction from Moms Demand Action, and actually my first endorsement came from former Congressman Ron Barber, who was Gabrielle Gifford's chief of staff, who was shot the very same day that she was shot. And he's been a friend and a colleague. We've worked at the federal level on a number of different pieces of policy. I currently serve on the Congressional Crime Victim Rights Caucus Advisory Group, where we advocate all the time for common sense gun laws. But one of the biggest problems is that we're not really strategically approaching this and looking at the NRA and how to weaken the strength that they have and the control that they have. And I think we need to look at, if you go back to the 1970s, the tobacco industry had a lot of strength too. But they strategically approached step by step ways to, through lawsuits and other tactics, but ways to weaken the tobacco industry. And eventually, you know, we started to gain ground. I think we need to take a similar approach with guns.
Hi, I'm Mila Johns. I am also proud to have the Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate distinction. I've actively been involved with this group for a while. I've lobbied in Annapolis very hard this session, particularly on the enforcement mechanism to require those convicted of domestic violence to surrender their firearms. I'm a victim of domestic violence, and I gave personal testimony about how the fact that my abuser had been prohibited from purchasing firearms because of a disqualifying offense while he was in the military saved my life. We need to work on this. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She's at Silver Creek Middle School. And a few weeks ago, I got an email that a student had threatened to shoot up the school, and it took them 48 hours to notify us, and that was horrifying. And that is something that I agree with Leslie on. We need to be doing more here in our community, not just in Annapolis. We've achieved a lot in Annapolis. We need to work on making sure the lines of communication are open here.
I guess I should continue the trend of mentioning my name. My name is Ron Franks, even though you can read it, and you've probably heard it before. And also, I guess I'll spare you the distinctions and endorsements too. I think when we're talking about gun violence, it's a credit to our delegation that we do have some of the strictest gun laws in the state. I think we can move further with an assault weapons ban, but also I think what we need to do is think about, you know, how we're going to deal with the issue of the transfers of these weapons. A lot of the shootings that make it to the news are because a kid found it in the home, brought it to school, and did the unthinkable. But then there's also the issue of people stealing guns, and then there's also the issue of people being able to buy a gun in Virginia, bring it back here without any problem, and things like that. So I think I think that a way to move forward is to focus on how we deal with illegal transmission of these weapons and preventing them from being used by someone who isn't actually the owner. And I think the biometric system that Jared mentioned is a good way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I want to credit Helga for being the one who made me aware that there was even such a thing as a gun sense candidate distinction. So I have one of those too, but I only knew about it because of Helga. So I'm proud as a member of the Democratic majority in the General Assembly to have voted for one of the nation's toughest laws to prevent gun violence. This was in 2013. This was after what happened in Newtown, and this was a battle. You know, even in Blue, Maryland, it was a battle to get that law passed, and hearings that went late into the night. This year, I'm proud to have voted for 4 new gun safety laws that will improve upon what we did in the past, taking guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, banning bump stocks, a red flag law to help take away guns from people who are a danger to themselves or others, and reforming the Handgun Permit Review Board. Another bill I would pass is House Bill 904 that we passed twice in the House but hasn't passed the Senate to keep guns off of college campuses.
Because I worked in DC, of course, gun violence was part of their lives. And I think we're talking about 2 different types of gun violence. When we're talking about where we live, I think we're talking more about all the things that have been done, and all the solutions that everyone's spoken about, which are absolutely brilliant. And those are the things that we need to work towards. Obviously, access is a huge issue. Not that I talk a lot about my family, but one of my family members came home intoxicated, and there was a gun right under the couch. This is in Olney, under the couch, and she shot herself. And had that gun not been there, had there been a law to lock up guns, I think she would still be here today. So I think there are a lot of, just the access is one thing. Another thing is in Baltimore, it's a whole new set of issues. So, that is all about helping people, changing their situations. I had a student from DC who came to my house, and when he I was helping him with some financial literacy stuff, actually. And when he opened his bag, he had a gun. And I was like, oh my gosh, why do you have a gun? And he's like, Ms. Carhart, you don't understand. Where I'm from, you have to have a gun. And I don't think that that's an unusual state of mind also in Baltimore. And we need to help them change their communities, change their safety so that they can feel like they don't need to have guns.
I also want to second Al's comments about Helga, who made me aware of Moms Demand Action, and I too am certified. I also believe I'm certified by the NRA as a hostile person, because I got their questionnaire and they said, if you don't fill this out, we will assume you are hostile to our organization. I think it's important that we brand them as a terrorist organization, because they've clearly become that. They might not have been that in the 70s, but they are now. They're the National Russian Association. They've laundered over $100 million to the Trump campaign. There are other things as well. I support Joel's comments. We need to be fully cognizant of the efforts to push concealed carry into our state. Now we can do more public advocacy and public health education on gun violence. That was banned for a while. We should open up consideration of requiring insurance with gun licenses. If you need insurance to drive a car, you should need insurance to carry a gun. I'd also like to see efforts made to allow for lawsuits against gun manufacturers. That would be a federal issue, not a state issue. And holding parents responsible for the actions of their underage children, because it's usually their guns that cause the chaos. I also would not try to repeal the Second Amendment, but we have a very serious problem in that 3% of Americans own 50% of the weapons. And we need to deal with that, and we need to deal with the weaponization of what gun owners are doing these days, because these are military-style weapons. Having a handgun or a long gun is one thing. Having military weapons is a completely different thing.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, we have time for one more question before we go to closing statements. And the final question is, what will you be doing for the benefit of the state's senior citizens?
We've touched on a number of these issues here tonight. Jared talked about at-home projects, which are critically important. When I worked as a staffer on the county council, we did a lot of work on ensuring that seniors had transportation to their physicians. It's one thing to have medical care, to have your own physician, to have health insurance, but if you can't get there, that's a problem. We have to bolster that. As I said earlier, we have to ensure that our seniors have full coverage. Single payer would take care of that, but we also need to bring in long-term care insurance. My mother passed away a few years ago, and I had to deal with this personally. This should not be a private insurance issue. This should be something the government ultimately deals with. We need to bolster the fraud protections for seniors, and I know Delegate Kramer's done a lot of good work on this. Senior silver alerts are important, protecting one's privacy and security, but overall, making it very welcoming to age in place. I'm reaching that age now. I really would like to grow older in my home and not have to depend on others for as long as I can. So we need to change our perspective and how we look at this, and I believe we're doing so because the senior segment of the population is becoming maybe not the largest segment, but pretty close to it with the millennials. So this is a major issue for Montgomery County.
I agree with everything. They're all the same issues that we talk about all the time, which are transportation, Medicaid, and housing, of course, is a huge issue as we keep aging. Baby boomers are getting older. My mother is getting older, and that's one of the questions that she keeps bringing up is what's going to happen to her because it's so expensive not to live at home. She owns her house. She has the same house that she's lived in for 40 years in Kensington. So these are really important questions, and we need to definitely fight for more housing. We have to also, Medicaid has some quirkiness to it where it's not a smooth transition depending on how much care you need in your home. So we need to streamline that so that people don't have to go through so much just back and forth with the state in order to get the services that they really need.
Thanks for the question. I wanted to echo the comments of Michelle and Dana. So specifically what I would focus on is something that I've focused on in the past, and that is strengthening our safety net. There are some programs that help seniors especially from being taxed out of their homes. That is the homeowner's tax credit, the homestead tax credit, and the renter's tax credit. These are existing programs. They work very well in Maryland, but they could be strengthened even further. A lot of seniors are on fixed incomes, and over time, they really do get squeezed in a place like Montgomery County. I'd also like to do more to strengthen Medicaid. Having gone through the Medicaid enrollment for nursing home for my aunt in another state, as well as in Maryland, I know that we can do better in Maryland for how we handle Medicaid. A cool bill that we passed this year is a pilot program to offer dental care services as a part of Medicaid, and I'd like to expand that.
I agree with the comments and the policy points that were mentioned before me. I think particularly what Dana said about being able to age in place and having programming that assist with that. But so I guess I'll try to make sure that I focus on something that is actually different. For me, that would be looking at how we treat retirement income. I think we need to look at how we're taxing it, the amounts, the levels of why we've been doing it in the first place, to make sure that we try to look at making the environment more hospitable for seniors to stay here as opposed to moving to Florida or Delaware.
I live in the town of Chevy Chase, so one of the programs that we offer there and that I know Kensington does are the village programs that are designed to help seniors age in place and still have access to help around the house through different volunteers, trips to doctors, bus rides into downtown, things like that. And I think those programs need to be expanded, and I think you're going to hear that a lot. But one of the things that I'm advocating for that I think is a little bit different than I've heard anyone discuss is I want to make death with dignity an option in Maryland. I think that is an idea whose time has come with the boomer generation who are used to being in control of their health, their lives, and making decisions about their care. And people want the option to die with dignity. And I don't think that we should be saying that that is an option we're not even going to allow anyone to have. And it hasn't even gotten out of committee in Annapolis for the last few years. And if I'm elected, I will be a champion for that issue.
So I would say that housing costs and healthcare coverage are definitely a priority, but one of the things that I'm very in tune with is the social isolation that many seniors experience, and also the increasing rates of mental illness and mental health concerns in the general population, but particularly so with the aging population and the suicide rate increasing. And I really think that at the core of that is community connection. When you hit retirement and you're not seeing your colleagues every day and you're staying at home or not as connected and talking with people, that's concerning, you know, and it's in those healthy relationships, I think, that some of the struggles that life may bring can be worked out. Also, as people age, they sometimes experience physical pain and are taking opioids. And we know with the opioid crisis that sometimes there's accidental death by overdose, particularly with the aging population and medication management. So those are issues that I think are really important.
Thank you. Leslie Milano. I would say that similar to colleagues, my plan for seniors is really threefold. One is helping seniors to age in place. One of the ways that we can do that is to invest in home health. We also, of course, need to ensure that we're not taxing people out of their homes. That's why I have a three-tiered economic plan that I won't get into right now. In terms of accessibility to public transportation, I have a proposal that includes subsidized ride-sharing options from house to metro, and that would be really beneficial for seniors so they don't have to take their car out and find a parking space and walk to the metro, and that would also help to get more cars off the road. That's part of my environmental plan. And the last part is stabilizing and lowering health insurance rates and prescription drug rates. A lot of us up here would like to do a single payer program in the future. Right now, one of the things we have to do is to lower those health insurance rates. It's not just for seniors and individuals, it's for small businesses, but it's also for taxpayers. Because if you look at our school budgets and our county budgets, when we're looking at the health insurance rates go up, those benefits are covered by us, and that's less money in the hands of teachers. So stabilizing the insurance rates and bringing them lower is one of my top priorities.
I've mentioned it before, but we're fortunate to have my mother-in-law live with us and sort of complete the family, and that's a luxury, I think, for us, and I'm cognizant of that. And as Mila pointed out, in our town of Chevy Chase, we are supportive of an aging in place program. I'm proud of that as a town council member, to vote for that, to support that, to push for that. But this is not just this should not just fall on the heads of local governments and local groups. We're going to get more pressure nationally when it comes to the economic security for our retirees. Social Security, the trust fund is going to disappear within a couple of decades if it's not fixed. That's intentional by the Republican Congress to cut it. That's going to mean that the states are going to have to find the money to backfill the lost income that the current generation of retirees is getting for future generations. We're already experiencing that on health care with the individual mandate having been yanked and the state having to backfill with nearly $400 million of subsidies. So this is coming fast towards our budget, and we're going to have to deal with those fiscal pressures and really make sure that we're taking care of the economic security of our seniors over time.
Thank you. My name is Emily Shetty. So I have 4 things I want to mention in my 1 minute. 2 of them we've mentioned earlier. So one is ensuring that we have more walkable, transit-friendly, and accessible communities. The second is improving and significantly strengthening our financial fraud laws here in Maryland, particularly those that target our seniors. As Dana mentioned, Delegate Kramer has done a lot of amazing work in this space. If not for his work, my godmother's situation would have been totally different. For the first time ever, Maryland actually authorized the Maryland Attorney General's office, Brian Frosch, to pursue financial criminals across state lines. We might be one of the only jurisdictions that has this type of authority, and because of his authority, he was able to recover some of the lost assets that my godmother lost. I want to take it a step further and make sure that guardians of property that are appointed in these types of instances are not receiving any inappropriate kickbacks for referrals to care that they make. The last 2 things, I want to have an affirmative disclosure requirement for prescription drugs. When you fill a drug at the counter, a prescription for a drug at the counter, I want your pharmacist to tell you what your options are for cheaper drugs if you want to take them. So what generics are available to you, what the cash price option is, and what your insurance would cover. And the final thing is I want to make sure that we're providing adequate connections to in-home care options for our seniors, because there's a whole host of people in our community who are not eligible for Medicaid but who can't afford $40 an hour care. And so we need to make sure that we're giving them the options to stay in their home.
Thanks. I'll associate myself with all the remarks. I think we've touched on a lot of really great ideas. And I mean, I hear this all the time. One of the great parts of door knocking so much is getting to meet so many amazing people. And I talked to a woman a couple of weeks ago who had lived in her home for 55 years or so and literally told me how the neighborhood was constructed. And she wants to stay in her home until she possibly can't. Al has been a leader on the tax code. And I think we really need to look at ways to help folks who are on fixed incomes, make sure that the tax code works for them and that they can stay in their homes and continue to afford it. The Village program has been mentioned. The one thing I will say about that is, when you look at the communities that have the programs, they're the ones where people tend to have the most resources. So really thinking strategically from the state level about where are we providing the technical assistance and the seed resources, really, where there may be church programs or other programs to give them the boost to create those Village programs. The other thing I want to mention that I don't think has been mentioned is looking at whether some home modifications can be covered by insurance. insurance, or so through some sort of fund at the state level. Little things like putting a ramp in, or modifying a bedroom or something could be the difference between somebody having to stay in their home or moving. And ultimately, it's better for the community. It's cheaper for us in the long term, and it's an investment that pays in spades.
Great. We've come to the end of the Q&A portion, and we're going to move to closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes to offer their closing statement. We'll keep the timer going, and then they'll, I'm sure, be around to answer questions afterwards. So, Jarrett, take it away. 2 minutes closing statement.
Thanks. So thank you, everybody. Again, thank you for coming out here instead of watching the caps, or hopefully you DVR'd it and nobody will give you the score. I was raised by two parents who were Peace Corps volunteers in the good Jewish tradition of Tikkun Olam, and I wasn't quite adventurous enough to go around the world like my parents did, but I wanted to do something in service to give back for all the things that I had gotten when I was a kid, and that's why I became a teacher. I mentioned I taught in Baltimore for a few years, and again, that experience and the work that I did there, and the kids I still work with in Baltimore, has colored a lot of my career choices. I was fortunate enough to be able to work for DC Public Schools. I left the classroom to try to figure out where I could push the different levers of policy at different levels to make the changes to help those families. I worked for DC Public Schools. My last 4 years, I worked for Senator Casey from Pennsylvania as his chief education policy advisor. Worked on immigration issues, where I got to actually help write legislation that helped improve the lives of millions of people across the country. And the frustration that I saw that we weren't making enough progress to help the families that I worked with in Baltimore, the families who struggle in Montgomery County, in our community, that led me to want to run for office. I had been really active in the community on a lot of different issues across the state. I helped run a campaign in Baltimore City to pass the Maryland Dream Act. I was been on the board of the Montgomery County Young Democrats, where I was our point person in Annapolis on earned paid leave, which we got passed in Montgomery County. Then we passed in Annapolis. Mentioned my work on the Firearm Safety Act. Really proud that I was the chair of the Educators for Chris Van Hollen group during his primary campaign to get now Senator Van Hollen elected. And I felt like it was time to throw my hat in the ring. We don't have a lot of openings very often, and I wanted to make sure that I could be in a seat to really help those families. And we're losing a lot of experience one way or another in our delegation, and I think it's really important to look at folks who have been engaged in Annapolis, have a track record on the issues that we've talked about tonight. And on day one, I'm going to be able to hit the ground running, form the coalitions, build the relationships to help improve our community. My name again is Jared Solomon, and I hope I can earn one of your 3 votes for delegates. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Emily?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Emily Shetty, and I'm running for the House of Delegates. Hope to earn one of your 3 votes. So like many of my colleagues here, I wear a lot of hats. I'm a lawyer by training. I'm a political activist here in Montgomery County. I serve as the vice chair of our Democratic Party. I'm a community activist. I've been working here in this community for 10 years, trying to make our community a better place. Served in a lot of roles, a variety of different boards, community organizations, advocacy organizations, trying to use my skill set to advocate for progressive legislation that can help make our community a better place. I'm also a policy wonk. I've worked for 10 years in a variety of capacities. I worked on the Hill. I ran the Federal Legislative Affairs Division for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and now I work for a small firm representing a variety of healthcare folks on Capitol Hill doing Democratic consulting work. I'm really proud of the work that I do because I think it has given me the skill set I need to be a really strong voice for us in Annapolis. A couple of reasons I'm running include a couple of more hats that I wear. So I'm a mom to a 2.5-year-old boy, Aiden. The wife, my husband here, Ash, is right here tonight. And I think we need to elect a strong group of progressive legislators to ensure that we are the backstop to all of the craziness that's happening in Washington. And like Jared, on day one, I'll be able to hit the ground running, in part because of the community work I've done right here in Montgomery County. I'm proud to have earned the support of 19 different organizations, ranging from educators to environmentalists to a variety of labor unions representing working families across our community and region. And I'm really proud, especially proud of running the grassroots campaign that we're running. We've hit 8,200 doors, had 20 meet and greets across the community, and hit all 35 precincts. Again, my name is Emily Shetty. I hope to earn one of your 3 votes for the House of Delegates. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Joel?
Friends, Democrats, thanks for coming out tonight. Your being here demonstrates, once again, the times we're living in. The red lights are flashing. I don't need to say that any louder. We have real challenges at the national level, but we also have challenges right here at home. We are in significant budget shortfalls. We are facing, our immigrant communities are facing pressures like they've never seen before. Our schools need significant reconstruction. The transportation network is deep in underinvestment. The pedestrian safety we talked about tonight, people are feeling insecure. There are real problems, and what I'm offering is nearly 20 years of public service experience. I began my career as a Peace Corps volunteer. I served overseas. I'm getting emails and Facebook notes from the community where I live today and the last week over projects we did 20 years ago that are now coming to fruition. These efforts take time. We can't expect things to change overnight. What we need is persistence and resoluteness. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm really angry. I'm angry right now about the direction of the country. I think we deserve better. I don't think we've been given a fair shake at the national level, and I don't think it reflects who we are as people or our values. And we need to change that dynamic. And we can if we take hold of the reins, starting here and at the State House, and begin to fight back, begin to fight for a better environment, fight for a stronger education, fight for immigrant communities, push back on gun violence. There are a significant number of initiatives that we can do here in Maryland, not just to empower and strengthen our communities, but also to help lead the country. Now, in the town of Chevy Chase, where I serve on the town council, I see it every day. We have issues and discussions before us related to variances and pedestrian safety. I also served at a senior level in the Obama administration in charge of our work for the State Department with the House of Representatives. I've seen change, I know we can do it here, and your being here is a testament to how we'll get it done. I'm Joel Rubin, and I ask for your vote.
Thanks, Joel. Leslie?
Thank you, everyone. My name is Leslie Milano. I am also asking for one of your votes. I want to tell you just a quick bit about me. I started a nonprofit organization when I was 25 years old that was at the ground level of the anti-sweatshop movement. And I helped to move the ball forward in terms of getting a lot of gains for sweatshop workers both abroad and at home. Right now, I'm the executive director of a public health organization, and I've been doing that for a long time. So in terms of what I think a delegate that is successful and effective brings to the table, it's really two different things. One is public policy, content knowledge, and expertise. I hope that I've conveyed some of that to you today. I do have a graduate degree in public policy from Johns Hopkins University and a certificate of leadership from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. But aside from that is how to get things done. And that's not as easily assessed in a forum like this. You have to look at someone's track record and if they're able to effectively move the ball forward on various issues. For me, my 20 years of business experience and executive leadership experience is a type of experience that is necessary in a delegation because those experiences and what we can do in Annapolis is in terms of creating buy-in and strategic planning and moving the ball forward. And I think that that is critical when we look at all of the issues that are very important to us. Wearing my parent hat, we're out of time. We have overcrowded schools. We have a gun violence epidemic that is a public health crisis in our country, and we need to deal with a lot of things here at home. So in terms of successful delegate, constituent services is very important to me. Bringing funding back to District 18 and Montgomery County is critical, and that's one of my strong suits. And the last is successfully passing important legislation and being seen as a leader on behalf of Montgomery County. My name is Leslie Milano, and I'm asking for one of your votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Helga?
Hi, everyone. I'm Helga Luest, and I am running for Maryland State Delegate, hoping to have one of your votes as well. This is not my first time running for office. I actually ran 6 weeks after my 18th birthday as a write-in candidate for county committee, and I won, to my surprise. But I was reelected twice after that, and that was in New Jersey. I was very young, but I also had a very early start at public service and sort of the inner workings of government and policy. Fast forward to age 24, and I fell victim to a random attempted murder, and that kind of changed the course of my entire life. I decided that the way to make meaning of something that was really senseless was to do something positive with it. And that started with starting a national nonprofit organization to address gaps in our publicly funded programs and systems. That was the beginning, really the starting point of my doing federal and state level advocacy on different policies affecting trauma and crime survivors. I'm happy to say that I'm one of the very few candidates in the country that's running as a trauma-informed candidate, and that, if you're unfamiliar with that term, I'd be happy to share with you. But a lot of what I bring to this is the lens of research and evidence. I believe that all of our decisions should be based on fact and science when we have that available, and if we're missing the data, to get the data. And so I know that the trauma-informed approach works for survivors of violence and trauma, that being sort of abuse, neglect, disaster, violence, war, big umbrella, and affecting nearly every family in the country. Currently, I work for a government contractor, and I can tell you what I'm seeing is major shifts at the agencies where the block grants that are coming to the states are going to look very different, and we won't have the technical assistance and support that we once did. And this is why earlier I said 30% of the opioid funding was returned to the federal government. States couldn't spend it down. They were unprepared to do that. So I think I bring a level of leadership and knowledge to really be effective, to be the stopgap in Annapolis, and I hope for one of your 3 votes. I'm Helga Luest. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Mila Johns. I'm running for delegate, and like these other fine folks, I'm asking for one of your 3 votes. My experience is a little different than some of the people here. I didn't ever think I was going to put my name on a ballot as a candidate. It came as a surprise to me because I am a terrorism analyst by training. I specialize in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear terrorism, which really probably has you wondering, why am I running for state delegate? When Trump was elected, I had accepted a position with Customs and Border Protection. I was going to be in part of a team setting up a new vetting procedure for Syrian refugees. I took the job assuming that Hillary would win the presidency. When we all woke up that next day and discovered that was not what happened, I sent an email and said, I'm sorry, I can't do this, not in good conscience. So I'm not afraid to stand up for what I believe in and for what is right, and I will bring that passion and commitment to doing what is right to Annapolis. I'm not a stranger to Annapolis. I've been there lobbying on issues from making sure domestic violence victims can get protective orders, because it used to be that if you were just dating, you weren't eligible for a protective order. You were only eligible for a peace order. I followed that up with advocacy for making emergency contraception available over the counter in Maryland. Before that was the federal policy. As I mentioned, I've worked on gun violence prevention, and I am ready to hit the ground running in Annapolis. I know the ins and outs of how it works, and I'm proud to be a policy wonk, and I think that is an expertise I can bring to this position, because we need people who are going to do the deep dives and ask the hard questions and evaluate the science and the fiscal impact and the policy of all of the policies that we're going to be asked to vote on. Thank you. I'm Mila Johns, and I'm asking for one of your 3 votes.
Thanks, Mila. Ron?
My name's Ron Franks, and I'm not being intentionally awkward or bucking a trend. I'm not standing because my leg has fallen asleep for sitting here for so long. So I think, so I want to, first I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'm glad, I hope you guys got a chance to see what you need to help you make a decision going into the election, into this primary. Hopefully there was you've noticed some differences, you've noticed some things that you want to hone in on. For me, I guess I'm going to just talk about a little bit about the way I view the position. And the way I see the position is being your personal lobbyist in Annapolis. And so that's one part of it. And the second part of that would also be advocating not just on issues at the state level, but also at the county level as well. Because I think you should be able to come to your state representatives or your representatives in general and bring whatever problems you have to them and see where they can help you. I mean, they're paid, they're public servants, they're paid to do that. And that's what I want to be able to do for you. A little bit about me. You know, I moved here about 6 years ago from Miami. That's where I went to law school, to work as a contractor at the Department of Justice, and I've been investigating banks ever since. I'm not going to put you through the snooze fest of what that means, but essentially, my job entails taking a lot of complex information and breaking it down so that it's usable for people who aren't spending their entire day looking at it. So similarly, when you're talking about dealing with legislation and you're talking about dealing with policy, I feel like that's an attribute I would be able to bring to my service to you. Additionally, I think there's a couple of things that I look for and people who I want representing me. One, I think we touched on earlier, which is integrity, and two, drive. Because, you know, having all the policy ideas in the world is great, learning a lot is great, but nothing's gonna get done if you don't take the initiative. And I think, you know, for me, I think that's important, and I hope to be able to bring that to this position. So what I would want to leave you with is, you know, when you think of me, please think of those two pieces, and I hope I get a chance to earn your vote before the primary, and I look forward to meeting you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Al?
Okay, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you, David. Thank you to Mayor Tracy and the Town of Kensington for having this forum. Thank you, Ron, for suggesting the forum. My name is Al Carr. I have proudly represented District 18 since 2007. And I don't know how many of you have looked at your ballot that you're going to be able to vote on either right now or on June 14th or June 26th. But it's a crowded ballot. There are a lot of choices that you have before you. So once again, in District 18, we have a phenomenal crop of candidates, some really solid people. That happens every time, and it's no different this time. So one thing that's different about me is I have a record. So in addition to judging me on my words, you can judge me on my actions, on how I've performed over the last 10 years, all the votes that I've taken on hundreds and hundreds of issues. And my record is one that I'm very proud of. As a member of the Democratic majority in the General Assembly, we've done some great work. But more needs to be done, and I'd like to continue doing that work. As an individual legislator, I'm very proud of my track record in getting over 30 bills passed that I wrote through the House, through the Senate, and onto the governor's desk for signature. So we're going to have at least 2 freshman delegates in District 18. I hope you will also vote for me, your veteran delegate. A vote for me is a vote for experience, effectiveness, someone who's trusted, who's tested, who knows our communities well, and who's accessible to you. And so in closing, thanks again to you, and I look forward to seeing you at the polls.
Thanks, Al. Michelle?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm amazed. It's 9 o'clock and you guys are still looking pretty spry. So I have a little bit of a different experience. I just got on the ballot in February, and the reason that I decided to run was because I find that not enough is being done for the people who really need it in our community. I've worked with the poor, underserved populations for over a decade, and we have those issues here too. We have 1,500 homeless kids in Montgomery County. My background, I graduated in a degree in natural resource economics and agricultural and natural resource economics, which is interesting, from University of Maryland. And I was going to work with farmers, and I was on the Chicago Board of Trade, but instead I was lured to a job by Jamie Raskin teaching constitutional law in DC schools. And that really got me so interested, and I learned so much from those kids, and that drove me. My education taught me supply and demand and how to solve problems, and that drove me to the course of my life. After that, I realized, after meeting these kids in this program, that they didn't have SAT preparatory materials. They were behind everyone else because they didn't have that. So I started a nonprofit to provide SAT preparatory materials. Then I realized that once they get into schools, there's so much predatory lending to get kids into schools and amass these debts, that financial education was really what was important. So I launched that Financial Education Foundation, and I taught for years in schools throughout the city. And what I realized was that we need to bring that kind of education and activism into our communities. And I find that we're not doing enough to help the people that really need it through funding. Remedial classes at Montgomery College are not covered. Transportation subsidies for poor kids are not covered. And these are the sorts of things. Why aren't we helping our undocumented workers file taxes? That's financial education, but 50 to 75% pay. But we need to help them. So in closing, I want to do more. I've heard too many times that so many laws are being made about people, but without them. And I want to be the advocate that helps bring those needs to the legislature and the General Assembly. My name is Michelle Carhart, and I ask for your vote.
Thanks, Michelle. Dana, bring us home.
Okay, since I'm last, I want to do something a little different. I want to leave you with words that inspire me and comfort me during difficult political times. These are words from my first political role model, Bobby Kennedy, who gave this speech to students at the University of Cape Town 52 years ago this week. Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and in the total of all those acts will be written the history of this generation. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Of course, to adhere to standards, to idealism, to vision in the face of immediate dangers takes great courage and self-confidence. But we also know that only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. Few men are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the censure of their colleagues, the wrath of their society. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence, yet it is the one essential, vital quality of those who seek to change a world which yields most painfully to change. I believe that in this generation, those with the courage to enter the moral conflict will find themselves with companions in every corner of the world. I too hope that we will enter into this moral conflict and continue our resistance as our democracy dissolves beneath us. I'm very proud of my record of public service as a physician, as a surgeon, as an advocate, and I pledge to you as your senator that I will show up to work every day, act with complete integrity, and earn your trust and your respect. I'm Dana Beyer. I'm running for the Senate. I ask for your vote. Thank you, and now we can all go home.
Thank you, Dana. Let's give another round of applause for this group for their time and for their willingness to serve in Annapolis. And again, thanks to the Town of Kensington for hosting, all the staff, the elected officials here, and applause for yourselves for hanging in there. Thank you all.